the subjective world of one rather powerful person can infringe on the world of another person. I mean, this is something that I began to see ramifications of politically and psychologically, where people can exert a domineering power over others. I mean, if I can make you see the world the way I see it, then you will automatically think the way I think. You will come to the conclusions I come to. If I can control your perception, and that the greatest power that a human being can exert over others is to get control of their perceptions of reality, and essentially infringe on the integrity and individuality of their world. And this is done in politics, and this is done, for instance, in psychotherapy, which I mean, I remember there was one therapist, one psychiatrist I went to. He informed me that I was an alcoholic. And I said, no. I said, no. I'm not an alcoholic. I don't drink. As a matter of fact, and he, now I knew I didn't drink. And he would occasionally say things like, well, you look like you're feeling pretty good. I guess you hit every bar in town, didn't you, since I've seen you last. And now I found myself, this man was so domineering that I realized how, of course, being from the left wing, you know, I would use the word fascist. I mean, this is the ultimate pejorative term by the left. Authoritarian is perhaps more accurate there. But it does verge on totalitarianism. His view of me was that I was an oral addictive type. Now, perhaps that is correct. But I had pancreatitis at one time. And this means that I can't really drink. I mean, no one who's had pancreatitis can ever really drink. And I'd never really drunk anyway. And I didn't get pancreatitis from drinking. I got it from bad street dope. And it had a film developer in it. Almost killed me. So one time I finally said to him, I said, look, I used to be a drug addict. And I got street dope, and it had film developer in it, and it ate my pancreas, it damaged my liver, you know, it fucked up, it caused total kidney shutdown. Total, absolute 100% kidney shutdown. I almost died. And I said, if I would tell you this, wouldn't I tell you if I drank? Good Lord. These were fake Mexican Benny car wheels marketed by the Hells Angels, and they were poison. He says, well, I remain cynical. Now here is an example of this man. Now you see, I could just imagine a situation. You see, this is something that I dealt with in Man Who Japed, where you get in a futuristic apartment building, and I got this idea reading about People's China. You get all the people living in your building, and you all get together every 3 days. And everybody in the building tells you what's right and what's wrong, and you get up and you confess your shortcomings. And this is now called attack therapy. And I went through attack therapy in Canada at a drug rehab place I was at, although I wasn't there for drug rehabilitation. But you get a lot of people all yelling at you, you're an alcoholic. And all of a sudden the mystery of the Moscow purge trials of the 30s becomes suddenly very clear as to how a person could confess to a crime he couldn't possibly have committed. And get up and say, in the most sincere manner, that he has committed a crime, the penalty for which is execution, and he is pleading with the court to believe that he committed this crime. Now, if he convinces the court that he's committed this crime, they're going to kill him. Why is this man trying to convince the court that he's committed a crime, which is an absurd crime, in the sense that it's impossible that he could have committed it? Now, how did this man ever come to this point in his life where he is pleading with them to believe that he committed this crime? Well, this is the incredible power of one or a group of human beings to dominate the personal world of another human being, and actually to damage the contours of his psyche in such a way that the contents of their collective psyche invade his world and determine his image of himself, that he can actually believe their view of him. I remember in attack therapy looking around. Well, I noticed it better with somebody else. There was this one guy there, and he was dressed up kind of nattily, and he was French. And they said, "You look like a homosexual." Well, within half an hour, they had him convinced that he was a homosexual. He started crying in shame. I thought, this is very strange, because I know this guy is not homosexual, and yet he's crying, and he's admitting to this thing. Now, he's not admitting to this thing in order to cause the abuse to stop, and the screams of these people who had turned into demons were all yelling at him, "You fairy, you fruit, you homo, you admit what you are." I mean, because by confessing to it, he didn't cause them to stop. He simply caused them to yell louder and say, "We were right, we were right." He was beginning to agree with them. So one time, I was put on the hot seat, as we called it, and my old political days came back to me, and I rebounded with a thrust of fury at the managing director of the entire foundation, of the entire organization that was there at that time. And I just, all my old political, fighting instincts came out. And I finally had him admitting that, saying to me, "You have no right to criticize this because you don't know enough." In other words, he was saying, in essence, you see, that it was an authoritarian thing, and it was, he was copying to the fact that you will do what we say, and you will do it without understanding. You do not know enough to criticize. You do not know enough to rebuke me. And I felt I had become part of a small totalitarian community, you see, in which no one-to-one relationships were permitted, no private conversations were permitted. People were encouraged to narc on one another, report. They would report at the meetings that so-and-so had said such and such, had been overheard saying such, and so on. And all this can be viewed politically, and all this can be viewed psychologically. And to me, it was all viewed dramatically in my writing, in the eerie and uncanny invasion of one person's world by another person's world. That if I invade your world, you will probably sense something alien entering your world, because my world is different from yours. And if you're strong, you will fight it. You must of course fight it. You should fight it. But we don't, because a lot of it is subtle, and we just have intimations that our worlds are being invaded. We don't know where this invasion of our personal integrity is coming from. It comes from authority figures in general. By definition, anyone who can impinge on your world and deform it and insert into it their value systems and their view of you is an authority figure. That's how we define authority figures, and is a menace to your psychological and moral integrity.